So maybe I'll just share a little bit about the healing sessions. And it's been a continual unfolding throughout these years, that as my personal experience of reality continues to open on these larger and larger scales, the healing sessions have also continued to open on that scope. So in the beginning, I would see thoughts and emotions in people's bodies, and which then shifted to seeing past lives and the storylines, and then started to shifting to working with the whole soul for a whole patterning of the soul, which then showed up in lifetimes, and showed up in this particular lifetime, and it hasn't really ended. It's like what we are is just so unbelievably astounding to me, and each layer just keeps getting better and better and better. So in my initial sharing about speaking about surrendering, of that invitation to keep surrendering, that it just keeps getting better. So to trusting the process and surrendering through whatever's arising, because it will be exponentially more satisfying. So just to continue with the healing sessions, the shifting continued to open through these layers. I'll experience these game boards, or our reality in these layers that all arise out of each other. And so the opening continued through these layers of seeing light grids, and opening through these subtler aspects of the matrix. If you want to use it that way. Thank you. Thanks, James. Thanks. So at some point when I started opening up through what I call the cosmic body, I don't know what else to sort of call it, I started experiencing all the planets on the inside and astrology, and feeling the movements of that, the nature of them, the relationship of them, and feeling how we birth ourselves under certain constellations to support particular probabilities for the perfection, for the perfect learning experience, what we're wanting to experience ourselves as God's selves, creating ourselves as humans. And so in the healing sessions, I started seeing all these aspects of each person, of both the current conditioning, the soul conditioning, soul storyline, seeing the astrology, the probabilities available in that lifetime. And part of what the healing session was then helping to organize for individuals is to help support the alignment of the highest probability, the highest frequency outcome for this particular incarnation. And it would shift things both in the current sense of self, current conditioning, the soul. It would like shift on all these layers. And then some point after that, I was seeing these geometries of those dimensional bodies, and I don't know what these are called. I've seen these, I think they're Chinese. They're balls that are carved, and there's holes, and then the inside carving is another ball that can swivel around, and then that has holes in it. And then inside that there's another, it's like these concentric balls. Has anyone seen those? You know what I'm talking about? And what my understanding is that's all carved. No one glued pieces together like the halves together. So what at some point I started seeing these geometries of our consciousness, and the play of it was to support the moving of all of those probabilities and parts for the person, the consciousness on the surface level, to have all the holes line up, to come to yourself as source. So in terms of the game of consciousness sending itself out to the outer edges as human beings to experience, to be all these million fingers of God loving and touching and tasting itself, right? And sending oneself out to all those layers, and then having this game of coming back to source with all this incredible, rich, varied experience gathered on the way, you know, this shining of the gem. That the healing sessions started to help align all those layers to find the easiest pathway back to source. And so, and so part of it is the times that we're in, right? The time is really ripe for us to open. And then after that, what started coming forward was there's not a need to fix what seemed to have been broken, to not so much a need to go through and figure out the old way, where even just a few years ago, that was still what was compelling for me, of still meeting the storyline and the unfolding and the unraveling, and there still is, it still seems to be the functioning principle, as I was speaking earlier, you know, today, of these flowers unfolding, of meeting each experience and revealing the gem and storylines unfolding, and that still happens. But I'm also seeing the actuality, the functioning possibility, probability, I don't know what words to use here, of, it's like shedding a skin. That the way we have, like we've been, let me just be quiet here, see if I can say this differently. I just keep being struck by how amazing we are, like how amazing we are, how amazing this whole thing is, and that we've been evolving through a certain paradigm, which has brought us to this point. And that as opposed to continuing to learn through that paradigm, there's an opportunity to shed the whole paradigm, to actually shed the paradigm and step into a completely, entirely different way of being. So I see it as both an awakening that's happening through humanity, but also a really rapid evolution. And so it dovetails with awakening, because the sense of self, the sense of I am, who's functioned from this old probability, there's a certain level of surrendering that is really useful. Because if you've always, I'm just going to make something up here, totally nonsensical. If you've always driven and you would only drive purple cars because, you know, all other cars weren't safe, to then step into a reality of, no, all cars are God, and when they honk their horns, they're singing. Just making stuff up, right? All right, so to step into that and actually live that, and start your car, and hear your car hum and sing, right? It's an entirely different reality. And so this is what it feels like to me in like stepping out of this paradigm that we've been functioning from. And what it seems to me is that the systems in our culture that are breaking or broken are part of this old paradigm. And they're in the process of breaking. And as we each step into that new reality in ourselves, then we walk that forward for all of humanity. And as I was saying earlier, just briefly about relationship, when we shift ourselves in a relationship, the relationship changes. So as you step into this in yourself and you change, it changes everything.